You're standing on the riverbank, and it's 12,000 years ago. The herd already crossed. Antelope, mammoth, whatever's kept your people fed this season, gone. Splashing up the far bank while you're still stuck on this side, staring at brown water moving faster than it looks. You don't know how deep the middle gets. You don't know what's under the surface. You just know that everything you need is on the other side. And the river doesn't care. Right now, you cross rivers without even registering it. A bridge, a car, 4 seconds of tires on asphalt, and you're already thinking about something else. For most of human history, that same 50 feet of water was a wall. It could drown you, sweep away your food, or cut you off from your own family for a season. So, how did people with no engineered bridges, no ropes, no metal tools, figure out how to get across water that could kill them? In 1955, a construction crew building a highway near the village of Pessie in the Netherlands dug up what they assumed was a rotting log. It wasn't. It was a boat, a dugout canoe carved from a single pine trunk, just under 300 centimeters long, hollowed out with stone or antler tools. Carbon dating placed it at roughly 10,000 years old, making it the oldest boat ever found on Earth. For decades, some archaeologists doubted it could actually float. Then in 2001, archaeologist Jaap Bucher built an exact replica. A canoeist paddled it across open water. It worked. That's not a curiosity. That's proof that river crossing technology predates farming, predates writing, predates almost everything we associate with civilization. People were solving this problem while still living in the Stone Age. So what changed after that, nearly 7,000 years later? On the walls of a royal palace at Nimrud, Assyrian artists carved a very different solution. The relief, dated to around 865 BC under King Ashurnasirpal II, shows soldiers crossing the Tigris River during a military campaign. Horses swim, towed by their reins. One man rows a small boat. 2 others are simply floating, kept above water by inflated goatskins, blown up by mouth and clutched to the chest. No canoe. No dock. Just an animal skin water bag, repurposed as a flotation device, letting an entire army sneak across a river with their weapons still dry. Everyone assumes the boat came first, and everything else was a downgrade. It wasn't. The floating skin bag wasn't a poor substitute for a canoe. It was faster to build, required no woodworking, and worked for an army moving fast and light. Sometimes the primitive option was actually the better engineering call for the job at hand. Boats and floats solved crossing water you could paddle or swim through. But what about water too fast, too deep, or too wide for either? The answer, in most of the archaeological record, is almost insultingly simple. Rocks. Stepping stones are considered the oldest bridge technology humans ever used. And in England's Somerset Levels, timber walkways called the Sweet Track and Post Track, built across marshland roughly 6,000 years ago, show people were already engineering wooden paths over wet ground long before recorded history. By the Bronze Age, that idea had scaled up. The Archaeological Bridge in Greece, built by Mycenaean engineers around 1300 to 1190 BC, still stands today. A stone corbel arch structure over 22 meters long, sturdy enough that locals still walk it more than 3,000 years later. A rock in the right place, a log across a gap. That's the entire idea. No metal, no cement, just gravity and patience. Here's where it gets stranger though, because not every ancient river crossing solution belongs to the past tense. High in the Peruvian Andes, the Apurimac River cuts through a canyon so steep that a modern steel bridge had to be built nearby, just so cars could cross safely. And yet, every June for more than 500 years, 4 Quechua communities gather anyway. About 800 people, working over 4 days, weave a handmade rope bridge from a native grass called koya. It stretches 28 meters across the gorge, hanging dozens of meters above the water. Then, they walk across it on foot. Then, a year later, they cut it down and do it all again. Everyone assumes ancient river crossing technology got replaced the moment something modern came along. In Peru, that's not what happened. The Quechua Bridge is still rebuilt by hand every single year, right next to the truck bridge that made it technically unnecessary. Function stopped being the point a long time ago, which raises the real question underneath all of this. Why keep doing it once you don't have to? Because the crossing was never really the hard part. Wood, grass, stone, and inflated goat skin, none of that requires genius. What requires genius is convincing 4 separate communities to show up on the same weekend every year for half a millennium to risk their footing over a canyon for a bridge nobody strictly needs anymore. The canoe, the float, the stepping stones, those solved a river. The Andean rope bridge solved something harder, keeping a group of people showing up for each other long after necessity stopped forcing them to. So picture that riverbank again. The herd's gone, the water's fast, and it's cold, and you're alone with a decision only your own body can make. Except you were never actually alone in solving it. Somebody upstream had already tested the current. Somebody else had already carved the log, and somebody's grandmother had already taught the trick for staying afloat. The real crossing technology was never the wood or the rope. It was the fact that nobody had to invent it twice. Every bridge you drive over without a second thought is really a small monument to a fear that somebody, a long time ago, decided was worth solving together.